Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Panzer Dragoon Remake, a beloved Sega classic given new life. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Megas Pixel Studio and publisher Forever Entertainment, Panzer Dragoon Remake is the re-imaging of Sega's 1995 Sega Saturn classic, Panzer Dragoon, developed by Sega's Team Andromeda. So, right off the bat, this title I can say is kind of a hard sell. If you're a fan of the original Panzer Dragoon and want to get a more modern take on it, then this is one that I can recommend you check out. Or if you're a fan of rail shooters, then maybe as a sell, it's one that I can recommend. But at its full price, it's a bit hard to recommend. So why is that? Well, let's dive into the gameplay and see what we have here first. So you have the ability to continue a new game, or rather continue a previous game or start a new game. That is a great quality of life feature to have added. There's 3 difficulty settings, easy, normal, and hard. If I remember correctly, I believe the original Panzer Dragoon just has normal and hard difficulties, so the easy is a nice addition. The cutscenes that were present in the original Panzer Dragoon are here in Panzer Dragoon Remake, just kind of re-envisioned in their new graphics engine, but the animation is still the same and kind of feels clunky and almost a little bit out of place given the art style, although admittedly it was pretty clunky in the original as well. The loading times are a little bit long on the Switch. This title is coming to PC as well as Stadia, but those don't have release dates yet. But when the game finally starts, the first time I loaded this up, I was just blown away. It's stunningly gorgeous, and for someone that has so much nostalgia for the title itself, seeing that this just really took my breath away. I love the way this stage looks. And here's a quick little bit of footage from the original Panzer Dragoon that I took for my video a couple years ago. And 25 years ago, I was blown away by this. And now, to be presented with this gorgeous vista just stretching out in front of us, for me, this is worth price of entry, by itself. So, as far as what Panzer Dragoon is a fairly straightforward rail shooter. We have the ability to move our reticule around the screen, as well as moving our dragon when we're facing forward. I'll get to that part here in just a second. We have the ability to shoot with our normal shot, or we can lock onto the enemies and fire a laser that does do a fair bit of damage. So we also have a unique ability for some rail shooters to change our perspective to either side of the dragon or behind the dragon. And especially in boss fights, that comes into play quite a bit. And those are our basic mechanics. As far as other features, if we take damage, that'll be displayed on will show up on our health bar there, which is in the bottom left. And we do have a really handy radar in the top right. It's got a cone to show which direction around your dragon you're facing. And if you've got a major enemy or bosses around, they'll show up as a big red circle. Normal enemies will show up as smaller, yellow circles. So you have a good idea of where the danger that is around you is coming from. So as far as new features are concerned, that's one thing I feel that Panzer Dragoon Remake is lacking. So we do have an additional new control scheme. The original control scheme is largely untouched and presented here as the classic control scheme, but they also added modern control scheme, which kind of makes it feel a little bit more twin stick, or even like third person shooter-esque, where you've got one stick that controls your movement one stick that controls the aim, and you can fire with the shoulder buttons. Whereas in the original Panzer Dragoon, you've got one stick that controls both your movement and your aim, so that admittedly can get clunky, but it is what I prefer since I'm a little bit more old school that way. And we also have the fire button just on the face buttons. So in addition to the new control scheme, another thing that was added was this photo mode. And it's similar to a lot of photo modes you can find in other more modern games, where we can pause the game and move the camera around the dragon. There's some great abilities to zoom in, zoom out, tilt the camera a little bit. We can even change some of the color grading. It's a nice, fun addition, but I kind of wish there was even more added to the game itself. So we find ourselves facing our first boss, this Imperial battleship. And just the detail you can see on the battleship compared to how it looked on the Saturn is another one of those features that I can definitely appreciate. Having to add in so much with your own imagination from the original was part of the charm, admittedly, but it is nice having that greater level of just depth that all this detail presents. So, as I mentioned, the boss fights do a great job of forcing us to move the camera around and fighting the enemies from all around. So, as far as Panzer Dragoon Remake is concerned, one of the biggest things that I can really note about it is that as far as mechanically concerned, it's largely the same as the original title, including some flaws like just having a massive, what feels like a massively huge hitbox on the dragon itself, and just a little bit of clunkiness with the controls itself. Panzer Dragoon 2's Vi, it really does improve on this, so I'm hoping that when the remake of that is released, we see some of those improvements in that title. So we just largely see improvements in the graphical side of the title, and for a fan of the series like me, that's almost enough just to make this. No, there's not like almost enough. It is worth it to me to have the updated graphics and to be able to play this on a modern console like the Nintendo Switch. So we're nearly done with this boss fight. We see some parts of that can get a little bit frustrating here. Those torpedoes that the ship is firing at us are actually relatively hard to shoot down, or at least it kind of is the way that it feels to me if we don't get a good early start on it, and they can do a fair bit of damage. But with that phase taken care of, the boss goes down, and it's really nice to see the ship kind of just like break apart and kind of fall into the water in a relatively detailed sense, where you don't really get that on the Saturn. So there we have it. Panzer Dragoon Remake served up for your enjoyment. Is this title worth it? If you're a fan of the original or love rail shooters, then yes, I think this one is worth it, especially if you can get it on sale or at a reasonable price. There is also, at this time, if you're interested in picking up a physical copy of the game, it is available for pre-order on limited run, so keep that in mind. So let's talk about the minus and the plus flavors. As far as the minus flavors are concerned, I'm disappointed at the lack of extras that are present in the release itself. It would have been nice to have something like a gallery of assets or some other extras like that, at the very least, in the main menu. There is a little bit of that with the ending of the game, but I don't really feel like that's quite enough to be frank. Then we also have, for the most part, the game is lovingly recreated, and unfortunately that also includes the flaws that were present in the original Panzer Dragoon are still present in Panzer Dragoon Remake. And then just a minor complaint, which might possibly be addressed in its other release versions. The loading times just feel a tad on the excessive side. But if I remember correctly, they kind of wore in the Saturn release as well, so that could be more attributed to lower memory as well as CD loading times. But as far as the plus flavors are concerned, for me especially, just how stunningly beautiful and how great of a nostalgia trip this is for me. That's really all I need. The title itself, see, right off the bat, from the moment I started playing it, I was just blown away. My breath was taken from me as I was left in awe of how this game looks. And playing through the entire game, I was just entranced by how this game that I had known so well for so many years had been reimagined into something so gorgeous. And like I said, 25 years ago, I thought the original Panzer Dragoon looked great, but it's really wonderful to see it given new life yet again and be presented to a new audience, even if I feel it might not be the easiest sell to that audience for lots of various reasons. So here's hoping that we get news of Panzer Dragoon 2's Vi remake really soon. Alright, well, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.